All right, guys, the last part that I want to show you is, you know, uh, rod and reels are really kind of useless without having the right bait, terminal tackle, etc. And, you've seen on some of my rods, kind of really what I'm throwing, what techniques I'm using. We talked about, using crankbaits, talked about using lipless crankbaits, jigs, um, soft plastics, Texas rigs, etc. So, my wife will often ask me, why do you need so many worms? Those types of things. And the answer is you can never have enough. There's so many different sizes and colors and designs. I don't think that the more you fish, if you see something, you typically buy it because you want to try it out. So over the years, I've had lots of different tackle boxes, tackle organizers, and this is probably the one that I've had the longest, and certainly it is my favorite tackle organizer of all time. This is a Falcon um, FTO bag, and this is the V12. This is the V12 tackle bag, which is kind of like the Ferrari of Falcon's tackle bags. They do make a V8 or a V6, so they make a couple of smaller tackle organizer bags, but this one really, this thing's about as full as it can possibly get. But like I said, I've fished and had the opportunity um, to go to Mexico and fish Lake El Salto, and I've done a lot of traveling and been able to fish in quite a few different states. And this is the kind of bag where you can pretty much go on the road with this and almost have everything you need. And I am saying almost because I still have some other organizer boxes in my boat, but for the most part, really everything that I need to fish with is right here. With the exception of in my boat, I've got a couple more boxes that have crankbaits in it because I have a lot of crankbaits, and I also keep my umbrella rig out separate, and then I've got my swim baits for my umbrella rig out and separate. But for the most part, everything is right here in this bag. So let me just kind of walk you through the bag real quick. What's really nice about this bag is on the front, it's a two zippered pocket, and basically this opens up, and what you have here is an FTO, which is a Falcon tackle organizer. This is an FTO 500 tackle organizer, and this one is really for terminal tackle. So it's really easy to get access to. I don't have to open the whole bag, take out a couple of boxes to get to my terminal tackle. It's right up here in the front. And what's really nice about this also, I don't know if you could really see it, but also on the inside of the flap, I can have, a pair of needle nose pliers. This is a Rapala needle nose pliers, and it also has, the ability to cut fluorocarbon, cut line, even cut through braid with these needle nose pliers. Um, this is also where I keep my little paring knife. This is what I use to sharpen, toothpicks if I want to peg some weights um, in the front there. As far as the terminal tackle goes, what's really nice about it is all the little organizers in here. And in this FTO box, you basically have side clips and you have front clips, where a lot of other tackle organizers just have clips in the front. This really keeps it nice and tight, and you really don't get any water inside of it. And then they have all these different size organizers here. And at the bottom, they actually have hook sizes. So it really helps you organize your tackle. And if you look here, I mean, I have everything from my J bend to wide gaps. This is also where I've got some pre-rigged, Carolina rigs. I have all my different weights of all different sizes. I've also got my shaky head, shaky head um, jigs. I've also got some tube rigs. So really everything that I need. I also have some pretty decent little split shots, with, Ray Roberts specifically. I like to throw centipedes, and if I don't want to use a weight, I'll actually use one of these, type of split shots, move it up the line, and where I can get it out there and kind of, at least cast if it's really windy. And it does get pretty windy here in North Texas. So once again, this is everything. I've also got a few pre-rigged drop shot rigs. This is a Spro drop shot rig. So you've already got the fluorocarbon, you've already got the little swivel, you've already got the small little drop shot circle hooks. I've got all my weighted jig heads for my swim baits for my umbrella rigs. And then I have some separate swim bait, uh, weights here that are just if I'm going to be using a swim bait by itself. I've got some of those, and I really like the Yum Money Minnow swim baits, and I like their hooks that go with it, that have the weight on the hook itself, down there at the bottom. And like I said, you really can't go wrong and buy them if you're going to be doing wacky fishing. They finally, someone actually came out with it where it's called the Wacky O-ring, but really they're just O-rings. And I use these when I wacky rig. And then of course, as I said, right in here, ooh, I'm going to need more. I have a toothpick. Normally I have a few toothpicks in here, but that's what I'll use. I'll sharpen it down, push it down into the weight, and snap it off. So that's my terminal tackle box, and it's really nice because, like I said, each one of these boxes, at the bottom it shows you what the hook size is, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and so you can quickly look at it and determine, hey, I'm getting low on a particular hook size. I'm going to need to resupply before my next trip out. So that's the terminal tackle box. And once again, that goes right at the front of the tackle organizer. Really easy to get to. So also what you have on this bag, um, is you've got the shoulder strap, which is adjustable, padded, and then you've also got a carry handle. And this is Velcro, and it comes off. And then once again, you've got two zippers instead of just one. And then you've got an upper pocket here, which I'll basically keep my fishing license. Even though I have GPS and everything, I also like to have, some maps. Even if I have a GPS and I've got waypoints, I'll still pull out a map, take a look at certain things, because sometimes there's structure. There might be some artificial tire reefs, things of that nature that might be on a map that just isn't on the GPS. I showed you the Daiwa Interline rod. Well, this is the wire that comes with the Daiwa Interline rod. So you take it out here. It's just a long straight wire. It's got two little like rings at the ends where you can tie your line on. And of course, I keep my fishing license in here. And what's really nice about these FDO boxes is that they're specifically designed So this particular box, this is a buzzbait and spinnerbait box. They do make one that's 100% spinnerbait, but as you can see, I mean, this is pretty full, but at least of spinnerbaits. I really don't use buzzbaits a whole heck of a lot, so I don't have too many buzzbaits. But inside of the box here, I mean, you can see, I mean, I pretty much have as large of a selection of spinner baits as I can get in this box. I also have quite a few chatterbaits that are in here. There really isn't anything specifically for a chatterbait. And then I've got, a selection of buzz baits. Like I said, I don't have a ton of them. I have enough, so if I am going to throw a buzz bait, and I'm not going to throw some other, typically when I'm fishing top water, I like to fish, some type of a bait that I can walk the dog with, type of a thing. So it's just one of those things where if I have to pick, between a buzz bait working the surface or maybe some other top water bait, I tend to pick other things. But this is a nice organizer because I can actually have both in here. But I also do have, like I said, a large assortment of chatterbaits that are in here. I've got some smaller spinnerbaits that are in here, but for the most part, um, I'll also have a pretty good assortment of chatterbaits, um, you know, swimming jigs, that type of a thing. I really like to use this. I think most people who use a chatter type bait, and when you say chatter bait, that's the company who makes it. There's quite a few companies out there now who obviously make a very similar um, bait, and they call them something else. But the point really is that you're swimming a jig, and you have the device at the top, which obviously gives it a vibration, and you kind of swim this in and you hop it, much like you would a jig, but it has a different action to it than what a jig does. So pretty popular. Throw this around, main lake points. I like to throw this around docks is really where I like to throw this. Um, when the lake starts to fill up around where I fish, um, you'll once again, there's not a lot of vegetation on the lake that I fish. So what's really cool about this bait is when the water levels get high, it actually goes, comes up where a lot of weeds have grown when the water was low. And so though we don't have really any natural vegetation, any grass or hydrilla, you get a lot of the sticks and the brush that grew when the water was really low. And throwing this type of a bait through that is a really good bait for that. Just another type of a chatter bait. This is a different bait. I've caught a lot of fish on this actually. It's kind of a combination of a buzz bait with a hook and a grub, and makes a lot of commotion at the surface. It's really the only one like it that I have, and but I've had a lot of success throwing this. These are the worm boxes, which are pretty straightforward, and as you can see, they're pretty stuffed. Basically two compartments, and you leave your worm in the bags. Don't take your worms out of the bags, right? A lot of them have certain type of fish attractants, salt impregnated or salt on the bait. I've seen a lot of anglers where they'll take the plastics out of the bag and then put them in worm dividers. And, if you're not going to get out and you're not going to fish for a while, no matter what happens, they'll dry out and they're not going to be as effective. Leave them in the plastic, and a nice box like this gives you the ability to leave it in the plastic. From a soft plastic standpoint, I think everyone kind of has their favorite stuff depending on what techniques you're fishing. Um, if I'm fishing and I get into a school of fish, uh, and the bass don't want to bite a soft bait that has a lot of action to it, I really like to throw a Zoom centipede, and I really like to throw a Zoom fish doctor. These are a real small, type of stick soft baits, and it's the polar opposite of a worm that's got a ribbon tail on it that has a lot more action in the tail. So I like to really throw those a lot. At the same time, I've got a lot of finesse worms that I put on shaky heads. I do have a lot of larger magnum ribbon tail worms. So when the fish are onto that, I've got a lot of lizard baits that I really like to throw lizard baits on a Carolina rig. I've got a lot of crawfish type of plastics or creature bait type of plastics that I'll put on a Texas rig, or I'll put on one of my punch baits. So you'll see a lot of that. Pretty straightforward with my plastics. Once again, I think it's, as far as plastics are concerned, it really just depends on finding in your fishery what the fish like the best. I mean, in where I fish the most, here at Lake Grapevine or at Lake Ray Roberts or at Lake Fork, all three lakes are different. I mean, there are some baits that do well in all three of those lakes. I mean, a Zoom centipede does good wherever I throw it, but I find that a brush hog, does better at Lake Fork than it does at Lake Grapevine. I also find that at Lake Ray Roberts, a Zoom Z-nail does, better than at all the lakes that I fish. So it's about finding the right soft bait, and it's not going to always be the bait that works in every fishery that you go to. Um, Once again, all of these boxes are designed specifically for the baits. So as you can see here, this particular box is my jerkbait box, and it's designed specifically for jerkbaits. And they're angled. The box itself is angled for jerkbaits. So, this is a jerkbait box, and you'll find I've got, several different color variations of Smithwick Rogues. I've got a lot of different color variations of Rapala X Wraps. That's predominantly what I have in here. I've got a couple of Yozuris, but that's pretty much, what I have in this box. And right about now, like I said, out of all the rods that I showed you, not one of them has a jerkbait on it. And if I were going to go fishing tomorrow morning, I would definitely have a jerkbait on one of those rods. Next box is my lipless crankbait box. And once again, designed differently, but it's designed specifically for lipless crankbaits. And, you know, I've got a variety of different, types of lipless crankbaits here. I've got quite a few, Rapala, vibrating lipless crankbait, and all of these really kind of have a different sound to it. It's really interesting when you take a Rapala and you shake it, and then you compare that, here's a rattle trap, and you listen to it, and it has a slightly different sound to it. What's really interesting you know, is that a rattle trap um, produces fish. It catches fish. The problem with a rattle trap is they just don't last. Here, this is probably the most popular color, chrome with a blue back. And you listen to that, it's got a kind of a different rattle to it. But the problem with them is that they really are cheap lures. I mean, this lure here, as you can see, it's really not that old, and a lot of the chrome finish has just been totally, bitten off and by bass. It's not like I'm catching gar with this or pike, that have sharp teeth. I mean, this is just from, fishing, bass fishing. This is not that old of a bait. And, this is how it looks after catching, a handful of fish. Here's another one. You can really see it here. It's just, once again, not a real expensive bait. And they do catch fish. I highly recommend rattle traps. They do produce, but they just are really kind of cheap. Um, I really do like um, Yozuri lipless crankbaits, and I've got several of these here. Really a nice bait. This is really kind of a ghost IU, a very natural color. So if the water clarity is pretty good, this is a bait that I'll go to. Once again, uh, just another different vibrating sound. It's got a lot more, clacking in it, and it kind of gives off a different vibration in the water. I also have a few Team Daiwa vibrating, which are called TD Vibes, and this is a really quality bait. Still looks brand new, and I've caught a lot of fish on this. Once again, really a different sound to it. So that's kind of what you're looking for when you're trying to get into these lipless crankbaits. But I will tell you that color is important. People say, well, it really isn't important. Color is important. I can take a rattle trap in a chrome with a blue back and take another exact same rattle trap, chrome with a black back, and won't catch anything on the chrome with the black back, but catch, you know, 10, 15 fish with the chrome and the blue in the same lake, the same conditions, and it's just really interesting. At the same time, um, I find that a white bait, in this case, a white rattle trap, works really well when the water is stained and the water is really muddy. The white color just really tends to work, and it really becomes a go-to bait. Now I'm kind of excited about this bait. This is a new KVD lipless crankbait by Strike King, and it's in the sexy shad color, which obviously is a very popular color in crankbaits, and it works great. I have not used this yet. I just got this like a week ago, and I haven't fished with it yet. The one thing about this bait, and I didn't, when I bought it, I didn't bother to even read. I mean, I heard about this, so I wanted to try it, but this doesn't vibrate at all. There's no rattling in this bait or anything. So, um, I'm really anxious to see if this does as well as some of the other lipless crankbaits that I have. I have no doubt that the color combination will work, and the fact that it's lipless will allow me to control the depth and the speed. But the fact that it doesn't rattle, um, you know, uh, I'm not so sure that it's going to produce as many strikes and as many fish as some of the other vibrating baits that I have. So I will keep you posted on this. And if any of you guys have used this lure, and you do like to fish lipless vibrating crankbaits, let me know. As I said before, I really, really, really like to crank, but at the same time, I showed you that I really don't use buzz baits a whole heck of a lot. And the reason being is that if I'm going to go to top water, I will typically pick, a plug or something that I can walk the dog with. So really, this is my top water selection. I don't have a huge top water selection, because really, once again, when you get out and you fish, and you have that sweet spot and you're fishing top water, it really is in many cases, you just have a real small window of opportunity. So, I kind of like to pick that top, that plug, and that's what I'm going to work. And if it's not working, typically I don't go to a different color or a different size. I'll go to a buzz bait at that point, or I'll just decide, hey, I'm really not getting anything on top. But I really like Spooks, Zara Spooks. And probably the one that I use the most is this puppy right here, the Zara Spook. It's a puppy, and really kind of a natural color to it. I know it's probably kind of hard to see, but it's clear. It's got a silver back, green on the front. Um, so it's really kind of a natural bait. It's got little specks of flecks on the side, and this bait I really like a lot. It's a Zara puppy. I can walk the dog with this. It's fairly easy to work. The only problem that I find with a lot of the Zara spooks is that the front hook gets caught a lot up around the line. And so you have to end up using swivels, on the top to try to get it away some. And I'm just not a real fan of it. But if you don't use it, it just gets wrapped up. So you'll see here on my larger Zara spook right here on the front, I'll have a swivel to the front. And by using that, it seems to keep it from the line wrapping around that top hook. But when you're really working this bait and you're swimming this bait, or you're popping this bait, that front hook just seems to get wrapped around the line quite a bit. So on my larger Zara spooks, I will always go ahead and tie a snap swivel to the front. So a bait that I really like a lot. This is a team Daiwa lure. It's a TD popper, and this works really well. It's a really good popping bait. And then I also have one in a Matsuo version. And then I have another Matsuo, which I really like. This is a great Matsuo lure to walk the dog with. I kind of found the same thing where the line kind of get wrapped up. So I did put a small swivel snap on the front of this as well. But by and large, I think the bait that I've used forever and it's never wore off is the Hedden. And this is the baby, I believe it's a torpedo, but it's got a little propeller on the back. This is in a bass color, and this works really anywhere that I go. I can throw this bait, basically just swim it back across the top. You can jerk it, you can. It's not a great bait to walk the dog with, but you can. But very productive bait. So I really don't have a lot of topwater plugs and poppers. I've got a few other ones. I've got a Storm, that's in typical classic chrome and silver, with a little feathering on the rear treble hook. Make some good splashing commotion on the surface. Um, I bought this lure and had a lot of promise. I thought it looked great. Um, and it was expensive. I don't remember who the manufacturer of it was, but I saw it and I was like, I want to try it. And I never caught anything on this. I've thrown this a ton. It looks great. Once again, I had to kind of put a swivel snap on the front, because it was getting wrapped around. The front hook would get wrapped around the line. But it's just funny how some of my topwater plugs, they work really good for me and I don't have any issues with them. But some of the other ones, maybe it's something that I'm doing, but I tend to get that line wrapped around the treble hook. Never happens with my Team Daiwa TD pencil. Really nice topwater. It's got a little open mouth here, so it doesn't make a lot of commotion on the surface, but I can walk this. It's got a small mouth on the front, so it does make some splashing, but it's also got rattles. Really good topwater bait. I did real well on that actually in Lake Ouachita in Arkansas. the rest of my boxes are all crankbait boxes, and as you can see, this is pretty much loaded. And these boxes are designed, and they make different sizes. So if you have large crankbaits, deep diving crankbaits, this is really my shallow diving square bill crankbaits. And as you can see, this is totally full. So in my boat, I actually have another one of these in the in the box that has basically more. And some popular, obviously popular colors, a lot of citrus, citrus shad, splatter colors, which is a black splatter, sexy shad, and really there's a combination of baits. I've got a lot of bandits. I've got some Normans. I've got some Strike King KVDs in here. I've got a couple of Rapala shallow divers, but the majority of the baits that are in here are bandit and bomber, shallow running to medium diving crankbaits. Once again, a few Normans. And then basically it goes up in size from there. So this is where I'll go to my larger crankbaits, deeper diving crankbaits, and I've got a variety of different ones. The majority that I have in this box, really, I have quite a few Rapalas. When you get into the deeper divers, Rapala has always done really well with the deep divers. I've also got a couple of Lucky Craft. I've got a couple of Norman, a couple of bandits or bomber crankbaits. But for the most part, the majority of the deep diving crankbaits that I have in here are Rapalas. And there are also some big crankbaits in here. For instance, the two Lucky Craft that I have in here are not deep running Lucky Crafts. They're medium diving Lucky Crafts, but they were just really big baits. And, and I can only fit them in this box. But the majority of the hard baits that are in here are deep diving large crankbaits. The next box that I have are my largest of crankbaits. And when I fished Lake El Salto, you know, the key was when I wasn't throwing lizards, which is what you typically use on Lake El Salto, the other two baits that I used the majority of the time was a swim bait or a large crankbait. And, in particular, once again, when you look at these large crankbaits, the majority of these are bomber and bandit large deep diving crankbaits. I do have a couple of lures that are not. This is a Team Daiwa deep diving crankbait in a perch color. This really works well. Not so much here at Lake Grapevine, but I've actually caught some bass on this at Ray Roberts, and I also caught quite a few bass on some Arkansas lakes with this lure. When I was fishing El Salto, the lure that I did the best on was this lure right here. It's not a sexy shad. It's kind of more of, I think, a citrus color. This particular one is a fat-free shad. And this is a bomber. Last but not least, the last box in here. So as you can see, this FTO bag holds a lot of tackle. The last box I have here is larger jerk baits and deeper diving jerk baits. So I really have, in this particular box, I've got some Rapala, both in perch color, bass color, I've also got some Yozuris. This is a great lure right here. This is a Team Daiwa lure, a jerk bait, but a deep diving jerk bait. And I did really well on this at Lake Ouachita in Arkansas. Um, I also have a Lucky Craft, um, which is one of the interesting lures because it's got that body that moves, and it's kind of in a sexy shad color. I would probably put this sucker on and use it if I were going to go tomorrow on Lake Grapevine. An interesting lure right here. This is a Matsuo deep diving um, uh, jerkbait, and it also has rattles. And this is a prism shad, and so it's really kind of a real natural, ghost, clear. It's got glass. It's got a good action to it, and this sucker really gets down pretty deep. I have to say that I prefer using crankbaits when I want to go down deep, but I find that if the fish are pretty active and they're deep, um, they will chase a jerkbait, and they'll get after it. So that's really it for the organizers. Um, what's next on this bag, which is pretty cool, and there's more, is you also have your side pockets. And so, on one of the side pockets is really kind of where I'll keep my, I've got my lanyard that's got my nail cutter, which is really, used for cutting line, type of a thing. So, I keep that in my bag. I've also got my X Tools digital scale. It's probably not the best scale in the world. It works. You can record the fish. You can reset it. It also floats, which is nice. So if you drop it in the water, unlike some of the other scales that are out there, it'll sink to the bottom. Um, I've also got my X Tools pliers. These are the pliers that always seem to end up out in the boat. Not the heavier needle nose Rapala pliers, but this. I mean, it's got a really nice, foam handles. It's also got a line cutter. The line cutter's not great on it. It kind of has a hard time cutting braid, but it works really well, the pliers, and it floats. So, can't complain. I also have a little portable Garmin GPS, and I really like having this. I put a lot of waypoints into this, and the other thing is, it's good for emergencies. If you lose your GPS on your boat and you're fishing a big fishery, um, and let's face it, it might be a lake like like Sam Rayburn, that's huge, and maybe you haven't fished it very much, and your GPS went out on your boat, and you gotta find a way to get back to the boat ramp. So having this little portable GPS, I use it for hiking. I use it for a bunch of other different things, camping. But originally I bought it because my first boat was a backcountry boat, and I had a fish finder on it, an Eagle fish finder. But this was years ago. I didn't have a GPS, so I really kind of bought this for my GPS, and I had a little mount that this went on. Not very good because it's a small screen, but it works well. I also keep my little portable off in here. Um, uh, this is Roland Martin um, Mega Strike fish attractant. You could really use this on everything. I don't. I mean, obviously, a lot of soft baits come with fish attractant, salt impregnated. Um, I typically use this on jigs. I'll rub this and put this on the jig skirt, and that's really all I use it for. But I know guys that'll take this and rub it on everything, even hard baits. Um, I just don't do it. but I do like to use it on my jigs. I don't leave home without my spike it, garlic. Um, I don't know, it's just one of those things that uh, when you use it, you use it, and when the fishing gets tough, if I'm Carolina rigging and I'm not catching something on my lizard, before I give up on the lizard, I'll go ahead and spike the tail, and it seems to work. So I never leave home without my garlic, spike it, chartreuse, color, and I'll take a watermelon, red flake, zoom lizard, and I'll dip the tail. Make sure though, be careful with this stuff, because if you spill it and it gets on your carpet in the boat or stuff, it's a bear to get out. On the other side, this side is stuffed. Once again, it's kind of like fishing rods. You can never really have enough. And even in this bag, as large as it is, you always want, you'll fill it up. In this side pocket here, I keep all my jigs, my jig trailers, and I pre-rig almost all my jigs. So if I pull out any one of these jigs, it's pretty much got a jig trailer on it. And then of course I have the rest of my trailers that are in here. Um, I also have some swim baits that are in here that are already pre-rigged, but for the most part, this has my punch skirts. This has, some swim baits, but mostly it's got all my soft trailers for my jigs and my jigs that are in here. Now on the back, Um, this is really interesting, but you have a back pocket back here, and you pretty much know my favorite soft baits. I always tell people, if they say, well, what soft baits are you using? I will typically always say, just look in my back, the back bag here, because this is where, easy access to the most popular stuff that I use. And really what you're going to find back here is you're going to find, some Zoom lizards, you're going to find some Zoom centipedes. You're going to find some Yum dingers or some wave tiki sticks. I also have some finesse drop shot worms in here, some jackal drop shot worms. That's really what you're going to find in here the most is going to be my finesse worms, some Zoom Z-nails, some centipedes. Always going to find centipedes in here. Watermelon, red flake, watermelon seed. That's what I'm going to have back here. Those are my go-to soft baits. Also, what's nice about this bag is that on the bottom, you've got a zipper here, and it's got a raincoat that you can pull out and cover your bag. I really don't use it, and I wish I did, because I've had this bag for years, and of course, it sits out on my boat sometimes all weekend, especially if I'm fishing Saturday and Sunday. So the bag's kind of weathered some on the top, but this has a little raincoat for it that you just unzip, pulls and goes over your bag, and it keeps the rain off of it and it keeps the sun off of it. So once again, maybe this is too much bag, for some people. But I highly recommend this. You will grow into this bag. So even if you don't load it all up with the FTO organizers, maybe you only start off with 5 or 6, 4 or 5, you will grow into this bag and you will fill this bag up the more you get out and the more you fish. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to, make comment, question.